A normal drive home turns deadly when Marcus realizes a black sedan is following him. What begins as a routine evening spirals into bullets, blood, and a little girl calling him Daddy. In that single moment, his life shatters, setting the stage for a future he never saw coming. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Marcus Thompson wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished his shift at the construction site. His muscles ached, his back screamed for rest, but he couldn't stop now. Bills didn't pay themselves and his 8-year-old son Tommy was counting on him. Being a single dad meant there was no backup plan, no second income, no one to catch him if he fell. The divorce had been brutal and devastating. Sarah had taken everything, the house, the savings, even most of the furniture. She'd moved across the country with her new boyfriend, leaving Marcus with nothing but crushing debt and the most precious thing in his life, their son. The custody battle had drained what little money he had left, but it was worth every penny to keep Tommy close to his heart. Now they lived in a small, cramped apartment on the wrong side of town. It wasn't much, but Marcus had made it home with love and determination. He'd painted Tommy's room bright blue, hung up his drawings with pride, and filled it with second-hand toys that he'd carefully cleaned and repaired. Every sacrifice was worth seeing his boy smile with pure joy. As Marcus drove his beat-up Honda through the darkening streets, he thought about the parent-teacher conference scheduled for tomorrow. Mrs. Peterson had called, saying she needed to discuss Tommy's behavioral issues. The knot in Marcus's stomach tightened painfully. He was doing his best, working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, but maybe it wasn't enough. Maybe Tommy needed things Marcus simply couldn't provide. The rain started as he pulled into the parking lot of Sunny Meadows Elementary. Other parents hurried past with expensive umbrellas and designer coats, making Marcus suddenly aware of his worn work boots and paint-stained jacket. He didn't belong in their wealthy world, but Tommy deserved the same education as their privileged kids. Inside the school, the hallways echoed with the sounds of after-school activities. Marcus found his way to Tommy's classroom, where his son was working on homework with Mrs. Peterson's aide. Tommy's face lit up like Christmas morning when he saw his father, and all of Marcus's worries melted away for a precious moment. "Daddy, look what I made." Tommy held up a drawing of 2 stick figures under a bright rainbow. "That's you and me in our new house." Marcus's throat tightened with emotion. Tommy had been drawing houses for months now, always big ones with gardens and dogs. It broke Marcus's heart that he couldn't give his son those things, at least not yet. But someday, he promised himself. Someday. "It's beautiful, buddy," Marcus said, kneeling down to Tommy's level. "Ready to go home?" As they walked to the car, Tommy chattered excitedly about his day, his small hand tucked safely in Marcus's calloused one. These moments made everything worthwhile. The double shifts, the sleepless nights, the constant worry about money. Tommy was his world, his reason for fighting every single day. They were halfway home when Marcus noticed the black sedan following them. At first he thought it was coincidence, but when he made 3 random turns and the car stayed behind them, his military training kicked in. Something was dangerously wrong. Marcus had served 2 tours in Afghanistan before Tommy was born. The skills he'd learned there, situational awareness, tactical thinking, staying calm under extreme pressure, had never fully left him. Right now, those instincts were screaming danger at the top of their lungs. "Daddy, why are we going a different way?" Tommy asked innocently from the back seat. "Just taking a scenic route, buddy," Marcus said, his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. The sedan's windows were tinted too dark to see inside, but he could feel hostile eyes watching them like predators. His mind raced through possibilities. Was this about the custody battle? Had Sarah sent someone to take Tommy? Or was it something more random, a case of mistaken identity? Either way, he needed to get his son to safety immediately. Marcus made a quick decision and pulled into the parking lot of a busy shopping center. If someone wanted to make trouble, they'd have to do it in front of witnesses. He parked near the entrance where security cameras would catch everything that happened. The black sedan pulled up 3 spaces away. "Stay in the car, Tommy," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "No matter what happens, do not get out. If anything bad happens, call 911 on my phone." "Daddy, you're scaring me." Marcus turned to look at his son, memorizing that innocent face, those trusting eyes. "I love you, Tommy. Remember that, okay? No matter what happens, I love you more than anything in this world." 2 men got out of the sedan. They were big, wearing dark clothes, and they moved with the purposeful stride of people who knew exactly what they were doing. Marcus stepped out of his car, positioning himself between them and Tommy like a human shield. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Marcus called out, his voice carrying the authority he'd once used to command soldiers in combat. The taller man smiled, but it didn't reach his cold eyes. "We're looking for Sarah Thompson. We understand you might know where to find her." Marcus's blood ran cold. Sarah. This was about his ex-wife, not some random crime. "I haven't spoken to Sarah in months. We're divorced." "Yeah, we know," the second man said, stepping closer menacingly. "But see, she owes our boss a lot of money. Gambling debts. And when people don't pay what they owe, we start looking at their family." "I'm not responsible for her debts," Marcus said firmly. "And neither is my son." The tall man's smile widened dangerously. "Well, that's where you're wrong, friend. Family is family. And little boys can be very persuasive when it comes to getting people to pay attention." The threat hit Marcus like a physical blow. They were talking about taking Tommy. Using an innocent child as leverage for whatever mess Sarah had gotten herself into. "Not happening. Not today, not ever. You need to leave. Now," Marcus said, his voice dropping to the dangerous growl his soldiers had learned to fear. "Or what?" The second man laughed, pulling his jacket aside to reveal a gun tucked into his waistband. "You gonna stop us, construction boy?" Marcus assessed the situation in milliseconds. 2 armed men. His son in the car behind him. Civilians walking through the parking lot who could get hurt. The odds weren't good, but he'd faced worse in Kandahar province. "Last warning," Marcus said quietly. The men laughed and started moving toward Tommy's side of the car. Marcus exploded into motion. Years of military training kicked in as Marcus launched himself at the nearest threat. The element of surprise was his only advantage. These men expected a scared civilian, not a combat veteran who'd survived 2 tours in a war zone. His first punch connected with the tall man's throat, dropping him to his knees gasping for air. But the second man was already reaching for his gun. Marcus grabbed a handful of gravel from the parking lot and flung it at the man's face, buying himself precious seconds to close the distance. They crashed into the side of a parked car, fighting desperately for control of the weapon. Marcus could hear Tommy crying in the car behind him, and the sound filled him with desperate strength. Nothing mattered except protecting his son from these monsters. The gun went off. Pain exploded through Marcus's shoulder, but he didn't let go. He'd been shot before in Afghanistan and he knew he could push through it. With a surge of adrenaline, he slammed the man's gun hand against the car's door frame until the weapon clattered to the ground. By now, people were screaming and running. Someone was calling 911. The tall man was getting back to his feet, pulling out his own gun. "Tommy, get down!" Marcus shouted, throwing himself over the hood of his car to put more metal between the gunman and his son. Bullets sparked off the car's frame. Marcus' army crawled to the rear wheel, his wounded shoulder leaving a trail of blood. He had to end this before backup arrived or innocent people got hurt. The tall man was advancing on Tommy's side of the car. Marcus made a decision that would haunt him forever. He stood up, fully exposing himself, and charged straight at the gunman. It was suicide, but it would draw fire away from Tommy. "Come on," he roared. "You want to fight? Fight me." Both men turned their guns on him. Marcus felt bullets tear through his chest and abdomen, but he didn't stop. He crashed into the tall man with the last of his strength, sending them both sprawling across the asphalt. The world was going dark around the edges, but Marcus could hear sirens in the distance. Help was coming. Tommy would be safe. As he lay bleeding on the cold pavement, Marcus saw a small figure running toward him. Not Tommy, please God, not Tommy. But it was a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with dark hair and terrified eyes. She must have been separated from her parents in the chaos. One of the gunmen, the one Marcus hadn't completely disabled, saw her too. Even wounded, he grabbed the child, using her as a human shield as police cars screeched into the parking lot. "Stay back," the man shouted, pressing his gun to the little girl's head. "I'll kill her." Marcus tried to get up, but his body wouldn't obey. Blood was pooling beneath him and his vision was fading fast. But he could see the terror in that little girl's eyes, and it reminded him of every reason he'd ever had to fight. "Please," Marcus gasped, his voice barely audible. "Don't hurt her. She's just a baby." The gunman looked down at him with contempt. "You did this, soldier boy. This is your fault." But then something miraculous happened. The little girl, despite her fear, looked straight at Marcus. Their eyes met across the bloody pavement, and she mouthed 2 words that gave him strength. "Thank you." Police snipers were taking position. The standoff stretched on. Marcus knew he was dying. He could feel his life ebbing away with each heartbeat, but he forced himself to stay conscious. He had to see this through. He had to know she'd be safe. "Daddy?" Tommy's voice cut through the chaos. Despite Marcus's earlier instructions, his son had gotten out of the car and was crawling toward him across the parking lot. "Tommy, no." Marcus tried to shout, but only a whisper came out. "Stay away." The wounded gunman saw Tommy approaching and swung his weapon toward the boy, momentarily loosening his grip on the girl. It was the opening the police needed. A single sniper's bullet ended the threat permanently. The little girl ran straight to Marcus, falling to her knees beside him as paramedics rushed forward. "Don't die," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't die. You saved me." Marcus managed a weak smile. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma," she said. "Emma Rodriguez." "Emma," Marcus repeated, the name burning itself into his memory. "You're going to be okay now. You're safe." Tommy reached them then, throwing himself across his father's chest. "Daddy, don't leave me. Please don't leave me." As the paramedics worked frantically to stabilize him, Marcus heard another voice, a woman screaming Emma's name. A beautiful Hispanic woman in a nurse's uniform was pushing through the police barriers, her face a mask of terror and relief. "Mama?" Emma cried, running to her mother's arms. The last thing Marcus saw before losing consciousness was Emma pointing at him while her mother looked on with tears in her eyes. Marcus woke up 3 days later in the hospital's ICU, surrounded by machines and tubes. The first face he saw was Tommy's, pressed against the glass wall of his room. His son was staying with Marcus's sister Janet, who had flown in from Denver the moment she heard about the shooting. The doctors told him he was lucky to be alive. 2 bullets had missed major organs by millimeters. Another had shattered his collarbone. He'd lost so much blood that his heart had stopped twice in surgery. But he was breathing, he was alive, and Tommy still had a father. The news coverage was intense. "Local hero stops kidnapping," read the headlines. Security camera footage showed Marcus charging the gunman while wounded, drawing fire away from both his son and the little girl who'd gotten caught in the crossfire. The story went viral, a single father risking everything to protect innocent children. But Marcus didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who'd done what any parent would do. The investigation revealed the full scope of what had happened. Sarah had indeed accumulated massive gambling debts during her marriage to Marcus, debts he'd known nothing about. After the divorce, she'd continued gambling, borrowing money from increasingly dangerous people. When she couldn't pay, the loan sharks had come looking for leverage, family members they could use to pressure her. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. The woman who'd left him with nothing, who'd called him worthless during their divorce proceedings, had nearly gotten him and Tommy killed with her secrets. But all of that faded into the background when Emma Rodriguez walked into his room on day 5 of his recovery. She was holding her mother's hand, carrying a homemade card with flowers drawn in crayon. Her mother, who Marcus learned was named Isabella, looked exhausted but determined. "I wanted to thank you," Isabella said in accented English. "Emma, she has not stopped talking about the brave man who saved her life." Emma approached Marcus's bed cautiously, her dark eyes wide with something that looked like wonder. "Hi Emma," Marcus said softly. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she said shyly. "Mama says you got hurt because of me." "No, sweetheart," Marcus said firmly. "I got hurt because there are bad people in the world sometimes. But you didn't do anything wrong. You were very brave." Emma looked up at her mother, who nodded encouragingly, then back at Marcus. "I made you a card," Emma said, holding it out with both hands. Marcus took the card with his good arm. On the front, Emma had drawn 2 stick figures, a big one and a small one, holding hands under a rainbow. Inside, in careful first-grade handwriting, she'd written, "Thank you for saving me. You are my hero." Marcus felt tears threatening. After weeks of questioning whether he was failing Tommy, whether he was enough as a father, this little girl's simple gratitude hit him like a blessing. "Thank you, Emma. This is the most beautiful card anyone has ever given me." Isabella stepped forward, her own eyes wet with tears. "There is more," she said. "Emma, she has been asking for you every day. She says she wants to call you something special." Marcus looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" Emma took a deep breath as if gathering courage and looked straight at Marcus. "Can I call you Daddy?" she whispered. The room went completely silent. Marcus stared at this little girl who'd endured such trauma yet still had the capacity for trust, for love. Isabella looked mortified. "Emma, no," she said quickly. "We talked about this. Mr. Marcus has his own little boy. You cannot just—" "It's okay," Marcus interrupted, his voice rough with emotion. "Emma, why do you want to call me that?" Emma climbed onto the chair next to his bed, her face serious beyond her years. Because you protected me like daddies protect their children, she said simply. And because. She paused, looking down at her hands. Because I don't have a daddy anymore. Isabella's face crumpled. Emma's father, he died 2 years ago, she explained. Cancer. Since then she doesn't trust men easily. But with you she feels safe. Marcus looked at this brave little girl who'd lost her father, who'd survived a kidnapping attempt, who somehow still believed in goodness and safety. Then he thought about his own journey, divorced, struggling, wondering if he was enough. Emma, he said gently, I would be honored if you wanted to call me Daddy. But you have to understand, that means I'll always be here for you just like I'm here for Tommy. Can you handle having a big brother? Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? Tommy can be my brother? If his mama says it's okay, Marcus said, looking at Isabella. Isabella was crying openly now. I don't understand, she said. We are strangers. Why would you? Because, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the emotion choking his throat, families aren't always made by blood. Sometimes they're made by love. And sometimes they're made when people choose to take care of each other. As Marcus recovered, an unconventional family began to form. Isabella worked as a night shift nurse at the same hospital, and she'd been struggling as a single mother, working long hours to make ends meet while Emma stayed with various babysitters and neighbors. The trauma of nearly losing her daughter had shaken her to her core. I have been so focused on just surviving, she confided to Marcus one evening when she stopped by after her shift. Working, paying bills, getting through each day. I forgot that Emma needs more than just survival. She needs to feel safe, to feel loved, to have people in her life who will protect her. Marcus understood completely. Being a single parent is the hardest job in the world, he said. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. But you are doing more than surviving, Isabella pointed out. You are raising a son who feels secure enough to show kindness to strangers. Tommy, he has been playing with Emma in the children's area downstairs. He shares his toys, he makes her laugh when she gets scared. Children learn that from their parents. Marcus hadn't realized that Tommy and Emma had been spending time together during Isabella's visits. When he asked Tommy about it later, his son's response melted his heart. Emma gets sad sometimes, Tommy explained matter-of-factly. She misses her first daddy. So I told her that maybe she could share our daddy and I could share my toys with her. That way neither of us has to be sad. Out of the mouths of babes. As the weeks passed, Isabella would bring Emma by before her shifts, and the little girl would curl up in the chair next to Marcus's bed, doing homework or drawing pictures while Tommy worked on his own school assignments. Isabella would pick Emma up after work, often staying to talk with Marcus about their days, their hopes, their fears. One evening, as Marcus was finally preparing to be discharged, Isabella brought up the subject they'd all been dancing around. Emma has been asking if she can keep calling you Daddy after you leave the hospital, she said. I have been trying to explain that it was just something special for while you were here, but you don't want to break her heart, Marcus finished. She has lost so much already, Isabella said. Her father, then nearly her life in that parking lot. You represent safety to her. You represent the idea that there are still good men in the world who will protect children. Marcus chose his words carefully. What do you want, Isabella? Not what you think is practical or appropriate, but what do you actually want? Isabella was quiet for a long moment. I want to not be afraid anymore, she finally said. I want Emma to grow up feeling protected. I want to not feel so alone all the time. And I want. She paused, looking down at her hands. I want to trust someone again. Then maybe we can figure something out, Marcus said. When Marcus was discharged, Isabella made an unexpected offer. I could help, she said simply. With Tommy, with meals, with whatever you need while you recover. Emma would love to spend more time with her, with you and Tommy. And honestly, it would be good for me too. I have been working so much that I barely see my daughter except to put her to bed. It wasn't a traditional arrangement, but nothing about their situation was traditional. They started slowly. Isabella would bring Emma over after school, and the kids would do homework together while Marcus rested and Isabella prepared dinner. It gave Tommy someone to play with, Emma the father figure she craved, and Isabella the peace of mind that came from knowing her daughter was safe and happy. The arrangement worked so well that when Marcus's sister Janet had to return to Denver, Isabella simply started staying later. Then overnight on weekends when she worked double shifts. Then gradually, it became clear that what they'd built was bigger than just mutual convenience. Marcus found himself looking forward to Isabella's laugh, to her stories about difficult patients and hospital politics. He loved watching Emma's confidence grow as she settled into their makeshift family. Most of all, he marveled at how Tommy had embraced his role as big brother, protecting Emma at school and including her in everything he did. But it was the quiet moments that convinced him this was real. Like the evening he woke up from a nap to find Isabella reading to both children on the couch, Emma curled up against one side and Tommy against the other. Or the morning Emma had a nightmare and came running to his room, climbing into bed beside him and whispering, "Daddy, I was scared, but then I remembered you keep me safe." 3 months after the shooting, Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. He asked Isabella to move in permanently. Not as roommates, he clarified when he saw the uncertainty in her eyes. As a family. As partners. As people who choose to take care of each other. Isabella was quiet for so long that Marcus started to worry he'd misread everything. "Are you sure?" she finally asked. "This is not how these things usually happen. We have not dated, we have not had time to ourselves, we have not done any of the normal things people do before making such big decisions." "Nothing about our situation has been normal," Marcus pointed out. "But Emma calls me daddy and she means it. Tommy has told everyone at school that he has a sister now. And when I think about my future, when I imagine what I want my life to look like, you and Emma are in every picture." Isabella smiled through her tears. "Emma, she told me yesterday that she does not want to live anywhere else because this is where her family is. And I have not felt this safe, this cared for since before Miguel died. So is that a yes?" "That is a yes." 6 months later, life had settled into a rhythm that none of them could have predicted. Marcus was back to full strength and loving his new role as site supervisor. Isabella had switched to day shifts so she could be home in the evenings with the kids. Emma and Tommy were inseparable, and Emma's nightmares had almost completely stopped. They'd moved to a larger apartment, one with a real yard where the kids could play. Marcus had taught Emma to ride a bike, and Isabella had helped Tommy with his science fair project. They weren't married yet. Both agreed they wanted to take things slow, but they wore matching promise rings and talked openly about their future together. Then, on a sunny Saturday morning in March, everything changed again. Marcus was in the kitchen making breakfast when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, he saw a woman who looked vaguely familiar. Blonde hair, expensive clothes, nervous expression. It was Sarah, his ex-wife. Marcus opened the door but didn't invite her in. "What do you want, Sarah?" "I need to talk to you," she said. "It's about Tommy." "Tommy is fine. He's happy and safe, which is more than I can say for the last time you were in his life." "Marcus, please. I know I messed up. I know what happened was my fault. But I'm clean now. I've been in rehab, I've been to therapy, I've paid off my debts. I want to make things right." Marcus studied his ex-wife. She did look different, healthier, more stable than he'd seen her in years. But he'd been down this road before. "You disappeared for 8 months, he said coldly. "Your gambling debts nearly got Tommy killed. Men with guns came after our son because of your choices. What exactly do you think you can make right?" "I want shared custody," Sarah said. "I want Tommy to know his mother again. I want to be part of his life." Marcus felt the familiar rage building in his chest. "You want to disrupt his life now? After he's finally stable and happy? After he's got a family who loves him?" "I heard about the woman," Sarah said. "And her daughter. I heard you're playing house with some nurse you barely know." "Isabella and Emma are my family," Marcus said firmly. "They've been there for Tommy when you weren't. They've earned their place in his life. I'm still his mother, Marcus. I have rights." Behind him, Marcus heard small footsteps on the stairs. Tommy appeared in the hallway, still in his pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Daddy, who's at the door?" he asked. Then he saw Sarah and his face went completely blank. "Hello, baby," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I've missed you so much." Tommy stared at his mother for a long moment, then looked up at Marcus with confusion and something that might have been fear. "Why is she here?" Tommy asked quietly. The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her own son was afraid of her. "Tommy, it's Mommy," she said, kneeling down to his level. "I know it's been a while, but I'm back now. I want to spend time with you." Tommy moved closer to Marcus, tucking himself against his father's side. "I don't want to go anywhere," he said. "I want to stay with Daddy and Isabella and Emma." At that moment, Emma came running down the stairs with Isabella close behind. Emma took one look at the strange woman at their door and the tension in the room and immediately went to Tommy's other side. "Is everything okay?" Isabella asked, her nurse's training making her instantly alert to signs of distress. "This is Sarah," Marcus said simply. "Tommy's biological mother." Isabella's face went carefully neutral, but Marcus could see the protective instincts kicking in. Like Marcus, she'd do anything to protect the children in her care. Emma, who'd been quietly observing everything, suddenly spoke up. "She takes care of us," Emma said, her 6-year-old voice cutting through the adult tension, pointing at Isabella. "She makes us breakfast and helps with homework and reads us stories. And Daddy protects us from bad people." Sarah's face crumpled. Her own son was being defended by another woman's child, a little girl who'd known Marcus for less than a year but trusted him completely. After a tense conversation on the front porch, Marcus set clear boundaries. Sarah could prove her stability for 6 months, then they'd discuss supervised visits. If she remained clean and consistent for a year, they'd talk about more. "A year?" Sarah looked stricken. "I can't wait a year to see my son." "You waited 8 months while you were in hiding," Marcus pointed out. "You can wait another year if you're serious about being a real mother to him." Sarah stared at the door that separated her from her son, then nodded slowly. "I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to him." True to her word, Sarah stayed in town. She found a job as a receptionist at a dental office and rented a small apartment. Every week, she'd send Tommy a letter. Never demanding anything, just sharing little details about her life and telling him she loved him. Marcus read every letter first as promised. They were heartbreaking in their sincerity. Sarah wrote about her therapy sessions, about learning to understand the damage addiction had done to her life. She wrote about seeing Tommy from a distance at his soccer games. She wrote about how proud she was of the boy he was becoming and how sorry she was for missing so much of it. After 2 months, Marcus showed the first letter to Tommy. His son read it carefully, then handed it back without comment. "What do you think?" Marcus asked. "I think she's sad," Tommy said simply. It took another month before Tommy decided he wanted to respond. His letter was short. "Dear Sarah, thank you for your letter. I'm doing good in school. I hope you are feeling better. Tommy." But it was a start. Meanwhile, life in the Thompson-Rodriguez household continued to flourish. Marcus and Isabella had settled into a rhythm that felt natural and right. They shared cooking duties, homework supervision, bedtime stories, and all the countless small tasks that make up family life. One evening, as Marcus was tucking Emma into bed, she asked him a question that caught him off guard. "Daddy, are you going to marry Mama?" Marcus paused in the middle of adjusting her blankets. "Would you like that?" "Yes," Emma said without hesitation. "Then we'd be a real family forever, and Tommy would be my real brother, and nobody could take us apart." The innocence of her logic made Marcus's chest tight. "We're already a real family, Emma. Marriage doesn't make families, love does. But yes, someday I'd like to marry your mama if she wants to marry me." "She does," Emma said confidently. "I asked her." Marcus laughed despite himself. "You asked her?" I said, "Mama, do you want to marry Daddy?" And she said, "More than anything in the world, Mija, but these things take time." So I told her that time goes faster when you're not waiting for it. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. That weekend, Marcus made a decision that had been building for months. He asked his sister Janet to take the kids for the afternoon so he could talk to Isabella alone. They went for a walk in the park where Marcus had first brought Tommy after the divorce, the place where he'd sat on a bench wondering if he was enough of a father to raise a boy on his own. Now, almost 2 years later, he wasn't alone anymore. "Isabella," he said, stopping beside the same bench, "I need to ask you something important." She turned to face him, and Marcus was struck again by how beautiful she was, not just physically, but in all the ways that mattered. The kindness in her eyes, the strength in her posture, the love that radiated from her when she looked at the children. "I know we said we'd take things slow," Marcus began. "I know this all happened fast and in ways neither of us planned. But Emma asked me if I was going to marry you, and when I thought about my answer, I realized that slow doesn't make sense anymore. Not when I'm already sure." Isabella's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I love you," Marcus continued, dropping to one knee and pulling out a ring he'd been carrying for weeks. "I love your strength and your compassion and the way you make our house feel like home. I love how you love Tommy like he's your own son, and how you've made Emma feel safe in the world again. I love the family we've built together and I want to make it official. Isabella Rodriguez, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said without hesitation, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple band with 3 stones representing their family, Isabella laughed through her tears. "Emma is going to be insufferable," she said. "She's going to claim credit for this proposal." "She should," Marcus said, standing and pulling Isabella into his arms. "She asked the right question at the right time. Our kids are pretty smart." Our kids, Isabella repeated, testing the words. I like the sound of that. They decided on a small ceremony in the backyard of their new house, the one they'd bought together, with a real yard and enough bedrooms for everyone. Tommy and Emma insisted on being the ring bearers, walking down the makeshift aisle together carrying the rings on a pillow Emma had decorated with glitter and hearts. Marcus's sister Janet officiated, having gotten ordained online for the occasion. The guest list was small but meaningful. A few close friends, Isabella's parents who flew in from Mexico, Marcus's construction crew, some of Tommy's teachers who'd become like family. But the most emotional moment came when Tommy and Emma each read short vows they'd written themselves. Tommy went first. Marcus, you're the best dad in the world. Thank you for protecting us and loving us and making Emma my sister. Isabella, thank you for taking care of my dad when he was hurt, and for making our house feel happy. I promise to be a good son and a good big brother forever. Emma's vows were even simpler. Daddy, you saved my life and then you saved my heart. Mama, you're the best mama ever. Tommy, you're the best brother ever. I love our family and I never want it to change. There wasn't a dry eye in the backyard. The ceremony was beautiful, but what made it perfect was how natural it felt. This wasn't two strangers promising to try to build a life together. This was four people who'd already been a family making it official. During the reception, as Marcus and Isabella danced to their first song as husband and wife, Marcus caught sight of a familiar figure standing at the edge of their yard. Sarah had kept her distance, but she'd been watching from the street. Their eyes met across the yard, and Sarah raised her hand in a small wave. Then she mouthed two words, "Thank you." Marcus nodded in acknowledgement, then turned his attention back to his wife, his family, his future. Later that evening, after the guests had gone home and the kids were asleep, Marcus found a letter that had been slipped under their front door. Dear Marcus, Isabella, Tommy, and Emma, it read. I wanted you to know that I was honored to witness your wedding from afar. Seeing the family you've built, seeing how happy and safe Tommy looks, I know I made the right choice in stepping back. You've given him something I never could, stability, security, and a mother who puts his needs first. I'm still working on myself, still going to therapy and meetings, still hoping that someday Tommy might want me in his life in some small way. But whether that happens or not, I want you to know that I'm grateful. You saved him when I couldn't, and you've loved him when I wasn't there to do it. That's what real parents do. Thank you for being the family he deserved. With love and gratitude, Sarah. Marcus showed the letter to Isabella, who read it with tears in her eyes. She really has changed, Isabella said softly. Maybe, Marcus agreed. Time will tell. But for now this is enough. 2 years later, the Thompson family welcomed their greatest blessing yet. Baby Sophia arrived on a snowy December morning, exactly 9 months after Isabella had surprised them all with the announcement at their annual barbecue. She was absolutely perfect, 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and the most beautiful dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around her with wonder. Tommy and Emma had been involved in every step of the pregnancy, from picking out nursery colors to feeling the baby kick. When they finally met their little sister, the look of pure wonder and love on their faces was something Marcus would treasure forever. She's so small, Emma whispered in amazement, gently touching Sophia's tiny hand with reverence. But she's ours, Tommy said, his voice filled with protective pride. She's really ours. Marcus watched his children, all 3 of them now, and marveled at the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. 4 years ago, he'd been a struggling single father wondering if he was enough for one child. Now he was part of a family that had grown through love, choice, and the simple decision to take care of each other every single day. Isabella was a natural mother to Sophia, just as she'd been to Tommy and Emma. But what amazed Marcus most was how seamlessly the older children embraced their roles as big siblings. Tommy appointed himself Sophia's chief protector, always making sure she was safe and comfortable. Emma became her entertainment committee, singing to her, showing her colorful toys, and telling her elaborate stories about their wonderful family. Even Sarah found her rightful place in their expanded family. She was Aunt Sarah to Sophia, and she embraced the role with the same dedication she'd shown in rebuilding her relationship with Tommy. She brought thoughtful gifts, helped with babysitting when needed, and never overstepped the careful boundaries that kept their family stable and happy. 5 years later, on Sophia's 5th birthday, the Thompson family gathered in their backyard for what had become a cherished annual tradition, celebrating not just Sophia's birthday, but the anniversary of the day their family truly began in that parking lot so long ago. The backyard was beautifully decorated with balloons and streamers in Sophia's favorite colors. Tommy, now 17 and captain of his high school soccer team, was patiently teaching Sophia how to kick a ball with proper technique. Emma, 15 and already talking about following Isabella into nursing, was helping set up the birthday games with her characteristic attention to detail. Isabella, now a successful nurse practitioner with her own thriving practice, was laughing at something Sarah had said while they arranged the elaborate birthday cake table. Sarah had become a true and valued part of their extended family over the years. She worked as a counselor now, helping other people struggling with addiction, and she'd been completely sober for 6 incredible years. Tommy called her Mom Sarah, now, a title that acknowledged both her important place in his life and the healthy boundaries that kept their family functioning beautifully. Marcus had started his own construction company, Thompson Family Builders, which had grown into one of the most respected firms in the city. He employed dozens of people and had built a reputation for integrity and excellence. But his greatest achievement wasn't professional. It was the family surrounding him, laughing and playing in the yard he'd built with his own hands. As Marcus watched his family, because that's what they were, all of them in every way that truly mattered, he thought about the man he'd been 8 years ago. That scared, struggling single father could never have imagined the abundance of love and joy that was waiting for him. "Daddy," Sophia called out, running toward him with her arms outstretched and her face glowing with pure happiness. "Come play with us." As Marcus scooped up his youngest daughter, spinning her around until she giggled with delight, he caught Isabella's eye across the yard. She smiled at him with the same love and warmth she'd shown from their very first meeting in the hospital, and he felt his heart swell with overwhelming gratitude for this beautiful life they'd built together. "What are you thinking about?" Sophia asked seriously, her small hands framing his face with the solemnity only children can possess. Marcus looked around at Tommy laughing with his friends while keeping a protective eye on his little sister, at Emma patiently explaining something to the younger kids with infinite kindness, at Isabella and Sarah working together like the family they'd all chosen to become despite everything. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am," he told Sophia honestly. "I have the best family in the whole world." "Even better than superheroes?" Sophia asked with wide-eyed seriousness, because at 5 years old, superheroes were the ultimate standard of excellence. "Even better than superheroes," Marcus confirmed without hesitation. "Because we're real and we chose each other and we're going to love each other forever and ever." Sophia seemed completely satisfied with this answer. She gave him the biggest hug her little arms could manage before wiggling down to rejoin the party and her beloved siblings. As the sun set over their backyard full of laughter, love, and the kind of joy that comes from family bonds forged through choice rather than obligation, Marcus reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them all together. It had started with gunshots in a parking lot and a terrified little girl calling a stranger, "Daddy," in her moment of greatest need. It had continued through hospitals and healing, through carefully built trust and gradually opened hearts, through the daily choice to love and protect and care for each other even when it was difficult or scary or uncertain. Now, 8 years later, it was simply life, beautiful, messy, complicated, absolutely perfect life. The kind of life that proved beyond any doubt that heroes weren't just people who ran toward danger in moments of crisis. They were people who showed up every single day, who chose love over fear again and again, who opened their hearts to those who needed them most, and who understood that the greatest victory wasn't defeating enemies, it was building something beautiful and lasting from the broken pieces of the past. As Sophia blew out her birthday candles and made a wish with her eyes squeezed shut in concentration, Marcus made one of his own, that every child in the world could grow up feeling as loved, as secure, as absolutely blessed as his children did every single day. Because in the end, that was the greatest heroism of all, not just saving a life in a moment of danger, but building a life worth living every day after. Not just protecting children from immediate harm, but creating a world where they could thrive and grow and become the best versions of themselves. Marcus Thompson had set out to save one little girl in a parking lot 8 years ago. Instead, he'd saved himself, his son, and built a family that proved love could conquer anything and everything. He'd learned that families aren't just born. They're built, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of love at a time. And that was a better ending than any hero story he'd ever heard because it was real, it was his, and it would continue growing stronger every day for the rest of their lives.